The rehearsal dinner at the Scottsdale resort was supposed to be the night my family finally made it. 47 missed calls in 4 hours told me it was the night they finally broke everything instead. But before the calls, before the panic, before I sat alone in my Seattle apartment at midnight, staring at a bright red fraud alert on my laptop screen, there was just the familiar quiet of my home office and the low hum of my standing fan, and the particular kind of dread that only comes from watching people you love make decisions you can already calculate the cost of. I am a CPA. Numbers are not abstract to me. They are language. They tell the truth when people won't, and the numbers surrounding my brother Derek's engagement had been screaming at me for 6 months. Derek had met Cassandra at a corporate networking event in Phoenix last spring. She was tall, polished, and spoke about her family's resort development portfolio the way people speak about things they've rehearsed saying. Within 2 months, she had moved into his apartment. Within 4, there was a ring. Within 6, there was a wedding date at the Sonoran Sky Resort in Scottsdale, a venue that ran $18,000 for the ballroom alone before you touched catering, florals, or the string quartet Cassandra's mother had apparently already booked. My parents were thrilled in the way people are thrilled when something feels like rescue. My mother had spent 15 years watching Derek drift between jobs, failed business ventures, and borrowed money that never found its way back. Cassandra's family, the Aldridges, were going to fix all of that. Old money from Tucson, a construction empire, connections. My mother used the word connections the way other people use the word miracle. I did what I always do. I ran the numbers. Derek earned $54,000 a year managing a sporting goods warehouse. Cassandra was transitioning between roles, which I had learned was a phrase that meant currently unemployed but unwilling to say so. My parents had refinanced their home in Mesa twice in the past 8 years and were carrying roughly $190,000 in combined debt between 2 credit cards, a HELOC, and a personal loan my father had taken out when his HVAC business failed in 2019. The Aldridge family's resort development portfolio existed, as far as I could find, as a single LLC registered in Maricopa County, with no active permits, no completed projects, and one address that turned out to be a UPS store mailbox on Camelback Road. I told my mother this in March. She told me I was jealous. I told my father in April, gently, over the phone, walking him through what I had found. He told me I had always been the negative one in the family, that I needed to learn to be happy for people. I told Derek directly in May. He told me Cassandra's family didn't need to advertise their wealth and that I was embarrassing myself by playing detective instead of being a supportive sister. So I did the other thing I always do when the people around me refused to hear reason. I protected myself, went quiet, and watched from a distance. I had declined the invitation to the rehearsal dinner. I told Derek I had a client audit that week, which was partially true. The full truth was that I could not sit at a table in a resort I knew my parents couldn't afford, eating food I suspected was being charged to credit cards, already stretched thin, watching a family I didn't trust perform wealth they didn't have, for a wedding I believed was going to collapse before anyone cut the cake. I had boundaries now. I'd spent 3 years building them with the help of a therapist who charged $180 a session and was worth every cent. The Thursday before the Saturday wedding, I finished a long day of reconciling quarterly reports for a tech startup client and ordered Thai food and opened a bottle of Riesling and told myself I had earned a quiet evening. I checked my phone once at 7 p.m. There were 3 texts from my mother about centerpiece colors and one from Derek asking if I had changed my mind about coming. I replied to Derek with a simple no and put the phone face down on the coffee table. By 11:43 p.m., I had missed 47 calls. I had fallen asleep on the couch with a book on my chest and the television running low. When I picked up my phone and the screen lit up, my first thought, the irrational, groggy thought that precedes logic, was that someone had died. The second thought, sharper and colder, was that this was not grief. This was chaos. And chaos in my family had a very specific price tag. 21 calls from my mother, 14 from my father, 8 from Derek, 4 from a number I didn't recognize with a 480 area code. There were 62 text messages. I scrolled through the first several without breathing. Derek. Call me now. Mom. Leah. Please pick up. This is serious. Dad. We need you. Emergency. Derek. Cassandra's family is gone. Everything is falling apart. Call me. Mom. The venue is threatening to cancel everything unless someone pays tonight. I don't know what to do. Please answer your phone. Derek. Leah. I swear to God, if you don't pick up, I called my father back. He answered before the first ring finished. Leah. His voice was wrong. Not the voice of a man having a bad night. The voice of a man standing inside a building that is on fire and has just realized all the exits are locked. Dad. What happened? Start from the beginning. He took a breath that sounded like it cost him something. Cassandra's father. He left. Left as in he took the cash contributions from the gift table at the cocktail hour, the envelope with the vendor deposits, and his entire family, and drove away in a rental car. He's not answering his phone. Cassandra is. My father stopped. In the background, I heard my mother's voice, high and frantic, and beneath it, the lower murmur of what sounded like a resort employee trying to stay professional under pressure. Where is Cassandra? She's here. She's hysterical. She says she didn't know. Maybe she didn't. He didn't sound convinced. The point is, the venue manager came to us an hour ago. The Aldridges were supposed to cover 60% of the total costs. The venue has a contract. The caterer has a contract. If we don't produce payment tonight before midnight, they are going to release the ballroom reservation and charge the cancellation fee on top of everything already owed. How much? For the venue and the catering together. He paused. $31,000. I closed my eyes. I did not say I told you so. I had been raised not to say it. And even now, even at 11:40-something at night with wine still sitting open on my coffee table, the conditioning held. Dad. You need to call the resort's front desk in the morning and ask for the name of their legal department. You need to file a police report about Cassandra's father tonight, right now, before you do anything else. Because you need that report number for every conversation that follows. And you need to call Leah. His voice shifted. Something closed behind it. We need the money. I don't have $31,000 sitting. You have savings. You have that investment account. You have... Dad, my savings are for my retirement and my emergency fund, and they are not your... This is an emergency. His voice cracked through the word like a fault line opening. Your brother is standing in a hallway in a rented suit watching his entire future fall apart. Your mother is. He stopped again. We are your family, Leah. We need you to wire the money tonight. We'll pay you back. I swear on everything I have left. I knew that promise. I had held that promise before. In various forms, for various amounts, and watched it dissolve every time without apology. I knew the weight and the worthlessness of it. I can't do that, Dad. You won't. There is a difference. Then yes, I won't. I'm sorry. The silence on the line lasted long enough that I thought he had hung up. Then, call your bank. All you have to do is authorize a transfer. You can set it up from your phone. Just do it through your main account. We'll handle the rest from here. Something snagged in my chest. Not guilt. Not quite. Something more clinical than that. Just authorize it from your main account. We'll handle it from here. It was the phrasing. It was too specific. People in genuine crisis say, please help me. I'm drowning. I'll pay you back. They don't hand you instructions. They don't tell you exactly which account and exactly how. Dad. I kept my voice even. Why can't you put this on your credit cards? You have two with decent limits. You showed me the statements in March when you were asking me to co-sign. The cards are maxed. Both of them? You maxed both cards on. The flights, the hotel block, the rehearsal dinner deposits. It added up faster than we expected. He was talking quickly now, the words arriving just slightly ahead of his breath. Leah, there's no time for this. I'll text you the wire details. Just pull up your bank app. I set the phone down on the couch cushion next to me. I didn't hang up. I could still hear the murmur of his breathing. I opened my laptop. I wasn't checking my bank balance. I was opening my credit monitoring dashboard, the service I'd subscribed to 3 years ago after a colleague had her identity stolen by a contractor. I paid $12 a month for it and had never once logged in for a real reason. Until now, the dashboard loaded. There were 2 notifications waiting, both flagged in the last 23 days. The first, a hard inquiry on my credit file from a commercial lender called Meridian Business Capital, dated 18 days ago. Inquiry type, small business line of credit application. Address associated with the inquiry, 4417 West Ocotillo Road, Mesa, Arizona. My parents' address. The second, an account opened 11 days ago. Lender, Meridian Business Capital. Account type, business line of credit. Applicant name, Leah M. Donovan. Business name, Donovan Consulting Solutions, LLC. I stared at that last line for a long time. Donovan Consulting Solutions, LLC was real. It was my LLC. I had created it 4 years ago to handle contract accounting work on the side. It had its own EIN, its own bank account, its own registered address, which was my apartment in Seattle. It had never been used to apply for credit of any kind. The credit line that had been opened in its name carried a current balance of $22,400. I clicked through to the account details. The authorized signatory on the application was my name. The phone number listed was not mine. The email address listed was not mine. The business address listed was 4417 West Ocotillo Road, Mesa, Arizona. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I had expected fear or tears or the particular nausea that accompanies a certain kind of betrayal. What I felt instead was a sharp, absolute clarity, the kind that comes when a calculation you didn't want to solve finally resolves itself, and the answer is exactly as bad as you feared. I picked the phone back up. Dad. My voice was the voice I use in conference rooms. Not cold, precise. Who applied for the business line of credit through Meridian Business Capital? The breathing on the other end stopped. What? He said it too carefully. 11 days ago, someone used my LLC's information and my social security number and your address to open a $22,000 line of credit with a commercial lender. I am looking at the account right now. I need you to tell me who did that. A long silence. Then I heard my mother's voice come onto the line. Not gradually, but all at once, as if she had grabbed the phone with both hands. Leah, listen to me. Mom, we didn't have a choice. Your father's cards were already at their limit from last year. We needed to cover the florist and the bar package and the hotel room block, and there was no other way. Your LLC has a clean record. You never use it for anything big. We were going to pay it back from the wedding gifts. I let her finish. It took a moment. You used my social security number, I said. It was already in the family documents. From when your father was going to add you to the business in 2020? You committed identity fraud, Mom. We are your parents. Her voice rose into something sharp and frightened, which with my mother had always been the same thing. We gave you everything. Everything. You are sitting in your expensive apartment in Seattle while your brother's life is burning down and you are worried about paperwork. I am worried about a felony committed in my name. If you don't authorize that transfer tonight, that debt is still in your name. The lender has your information. If we default, they come after your LLC. They will report to your licensing board. You will lose your CPA designation. She paused. She had rehearsed this part. I could hear it in the rhythm. So you can be righteous, or you can be smart. Pay the venue. We pay off the credit line from the gift money, and whatever Derek can scrape together. Nobody ever knows. Everything goes away. There it was. It wasn't a request for help. It had never been a request for help. It was a disclosure of leverage. They had not called me because I was their daughter and they were desperate. They had called me because they had already decided that my fear of financial ruin would do what my love for them apparently could not. I thought about the $22,400 sitting on that credit line. I thought about my LLC, which I had built carefully and kept clean for 4 years. I thought about the word default and the word licensing board and the word felony. And I sat with all of them for a moment, the way you sit with a diagnosis, not fighting it, just letting it become real. Then I thought about what I actually knew, which was the law. I am a CPA. I have spent 11 years learning every mechanism through which financial fraud operates. I know what identity theft looks like on paper, and I know what it requires to dispute it, and I know, specifically and exactly, that the person liable for a fraudulently opened account is not the victim. The person liable is the person who applied for it. And I had the credit monitoring timestamps and the IP address in Mesa, and the fact that my own signature had never touched that application. Put the resort manager on the phone, I said. What? My mother's voice shifted. Why? Because I am about to explain to them that a fraudulent account was opened in my name and that I am not responsible for any contracts signed using my LLC's credentials without my authorization. And then I am going to call the Mesa Police Department's non-emergency line. And then I am going to call Meridian Business Capital's fraud department. And then I am going to file a complaint with the FTC. Those are the next 4 phone calls I am making tonight. If you would like to give me the resort manager before I start, I'm giving you that option. Leah, if you do this, put the manager on the phone or I start without you. There was a sound, like the phone being set down on a hard surface. Voices in the background. Derek's voice, low and frantic, asking what was happening. My mother's reply, too quiet to make out. Then footsteps, and a new voice professional, controlled, carrying the specific exhaustion of a hospitality manager who has seen too much. This is Raymond Okafor, Guest Relations Director. I understand you're the sister? My name is Leah Donovan. I'm a licensed CPA based in Seattle, Washington. I need to inform you that any contracts signed using the credentials of Donovan Consulting Solutions LLC were signed without my authorization or knowledge. I did not enter into any agreements with your venue. I have no record of any correspondence with your venue, and I have been in Seattle continuously for the past 2 months, which my credit card statements and building access logs will confirm. I paused. I'm documenting this call. I want to be clear that I am not authorizing any payment on behalf of any party present at your resort tonight, and that any attempt to collect from my business entity will be contested as fraudulent. The manager was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had changed. Miss Donovan, are you filing a fraud report? Yes. Tonight. Beginning in approximately 10 minutes. I understand. In that case, I'll need to speak with the parties present here directly regarding the outstanding balance. I appreciate you letting us know. I heard the phone exchange hands again. For a moment, there was nothing but background noise, someone crying, possibly Cassandra, possibly my mother, the sounds overlapping in a way I couldn't separate. Then my father's voice, thin and stripped of everything it had been carrying an hour ago. Leah. He said my name the way people say the name of something they've lost. Dad, I love you. But what you did is a crime. Not a gray area, not a technicality, not something family can paper over with a wire transfer. You stole my identity. You opened credit in my name without my consent, and you intended to use the threat of financial ruin to force me to cover it. I let that sit for a moment. I'm going to file the reports. That's not a punishment. That's me protecting myself, because that is what you have left me no choice but to do. They'll arrest us. His voice was barely there now. I don't know what they'll do. That's not my decision to make anymore. You're our daughter. I looked at the fraud alert still glowing on my laptop screen. I looked at the account opened in my name. I looked at the business address, listed as my parents' house in Mesa. At the phone number that wasn't mine. At the signature that someone had copied from documents I had given them in trust. I'm your daughter, I said. And you used that to steal from me. Those 2 things are both true, and I can't fix either of them by wiring you money. I hung up. For a moment, I just sat there. The fan hummed. The television was still running on low, some late-night host laughing at his own joke. The Riesling was still on the coffee table, and I poured what was left of it, and didn't drink it, and just let it sit there, while I opened a new tab on my laptop and started typing. The Meridian Business Capital fraud line was answered on the 3rd ring by a man named Joel, who had clearly fielded calls like mine before. I walked him through everything, the account number, the application date, my correct contact information versus the contact information on the fraudulent application, my LLC's EIN, and its registered Seattle address. He placed a temporary hold on the account within 12 minutes and escalated the case to their fraud investigation team, who would send a formal dispute packet within 3 business days. I called the Mesa Police Department's non-emergency line next and made a report. The officer who took my information was patient and thorough and told me to expect a case number by email within 24 hours. I called all 3 credit bureaus and placed fraud alerts on my personal file and a separate security freeze on my business credit profile. I pulled up the FTC's identity theft reporting portal and filled in every field. By the time I finished, it was 2:37 inches the morning, and the city outside my window was the particular dark and quiet that belongs to no particular hour. I was not crying. I was sitting very still in the way you sit after a long physical effort when the work is done and your body is deciding how to feel about what just happened. My phone had not stopped buzzing since I hung up on my father. My Aunt Karen, who had not spoken to me since a Christmas argument 4 years ago. How could you do this to your own family? Your mother is hysterical. My cousin Brett, who owed me $800 from 2021 and had never mentioned it. You're really going to let Derek's wedding get destroyed because of your ego? Disgusting. 3 different family group chats I had forgotten I was in, all suddenly active, all versions of the same message, variations on monster, selfish, cold. You were always the difficult one. I read them all. I didn't reply to any of them. What I did instead was this. I opened the family group chat that included my parents, my brother, and 11 extended family members who had been involved in wedding planning conversations over the past 3 months. I typed a single message, no greeting, no explanation, no apology. I attached 3 screenshots, the fraud alert notification, the Meridian Business Capital account page showing the fraudulent application details, and the FTC report confirmation number. Then I wrote, "This is why I didn't authorize the transfer tonight. I am the victim of identity theft committed by members of this family using my LLC credentials and my social security number. The fraud reports have been filed. My accounts are frozen. I wish Derek well." I hit send. I blocked my mother, my father, my brother, and every number that had texted me that night. Then I went to my bedroom, pulled the blackout curtains, and lay down on top of the covers with my shoes still on and stared at the ceiling until my heart rate came down to something manageable. I did not sleep for a long time. When I finally did, it was the sleep that comes after a decision you can't take back, heavy and dreamless and somehow necessary. 3 months later, I got a letter. It came in a standard white envelope with the Meridian Business Capital return address, and I opened it at my kitchen table on a Tuesday morning with my coffee still steaming beside me. It was a formal notification that the fraud dispute had been resolved in my favor. The account had been closed. The balance had been written off as fraudulent. There would be no impact to my personal or business credit. The case had been referred to their legal department for further action against the parties who submitted the fraudulent application. I read it twice. Then I set it down and drank my coffee. I never heard from my parents directly. I had kept them blocked, and I intended to keep them that way for the foreseeable future, not as punishment, but as a boundary that finally had real walls instead of the imaginary lines I had been drawing for years while pretending they meant something. What I did hear, through my cousin Nicole, who was the only person in that family who had texted me after the group chat message to say quietly and without drama that she believed me, was this. Derek did not get married that Saturday. The venue canceled the reservation. The caterer kept the deposit. Cassandra's father was located 2 days later in Flagstaff and arrested on fraud charges related to not just Derek's wedding, but 3 previous similar schemes. Cassandra herself, it appeared, genuinely hadn't known, and was last reported to be staying with her grandmother in Tucson, trying to figure out what her life looked like now. My parents spent the weeks after the wedding scrambling. My father took out a personal loan to cover the vendor cancellation fees. My mother called Nicole twice, asking her to relay messages to me. I did not reply to any of them. My brother, according to Nicole, had not apologized to me either, but he had, in a rare moment of clarity that Nicole described as genuinely surprising, told my parents that what they did to my LLC was wrong and that they were lucky I hadn't pressed harder for criminal charges. I don't know if that conversation actually happened or if Nicole was softening the edges. I have learned not to trust secondhand accounts of my family's self-reflection. What I know is this. I am 30 years old, and I have spent the better part of a decade being the person in my family who cleaned things up. I wired money for bail and for back rent and for a medical bill my father swore insurance would cover and for a car payment my brother needed just this once. I co-signed a lease and then paid 6 months of rent on an apartment I had never set foot in when the tenant stopped paying. I absorbed the cost of being reliable in a family that had decided reliability was the same as availability, and that availability was the same as obligation, and that obligation had no ceiling, and no terms, and no end. They had tested that ceiling many times. But they had never before put their hands directly into the infrastructure of my life and taken something from it without asking. The credit line they opened in my name was not just fraud. It was a message. It said, "We know where you live. We know what you've built. We know the thing you're most afraid of losing. And we are willing to use all of it as leverage." What they forgot, what they had perhaps always underestimated about the daughter they had raised to be careful and precise and relentlessly responsible, was that I had also been raised to understand numbers. And the number on that fraud alert was not a threat to be paid away. It was evidence. I am a CPA. I know the difference between a debt and a crime. I know the difference between helping and being taken hostage. And I know, with the kind of certainty that only comes from doing the math very slowly and very honestly, that the most expensive thing I ever purchased was the silence that followed the last blocked number. It cost me a version of my family I had been trying to hold together with my own money for longer than I can remember. What it gave me in return was something I had never once been given by any of them. A Tuesday morning that belonged entirely to me. A cup of coffee I made for myself in my own kitchen, in my own apartment, that no one else had any claim to. And the particular, hard-won piece of a life that finally balanced.